Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's conversation with our AGO RBC artists in residence, Mariam Magsi and Chengyang. I'm going to wait for a couple of seconds until everyone tunes in. As I see the numbers are increasing. Welcome, everyone. As I mentioned today, this is the conversation with our artists in residence, Mariam Magsi and Chengyang. And my name is Dana Abusido. I'm the curatorial associate for projects and partnerships at the AGO. And whenever we gather virtually or on site, we like to take a moment to remind ourselves of the responsibilities we have as treaty people and where we are on this land. So if we can move to the next slide, please. The land the AGO is on is Mississauga territory, Mississauga. It is also governed by a treaty between the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Canadian government. It has also been occupied by other Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat confederacies. And we can move to the next slide now. The AGO RBC Artists in Residence program is generously supported by our signature partner, RBC. And this is one of a trio of programs that we offer with RBC to support emerging artists and local talents across the country. Which brings me to why we're here today, and we can move to the next slide. Mariam and Eric joined us 3 months ago in this residency, and together they developed the Dawat Yan Banquet. And for those of you who are wondering, Dawat and Yan are the words for banquet, both in Urdu and Chinese. And this project is a process-based project. They have been doing a lot of research, a lot of a reflection on what a banquet means from the perspectives of Asian hospitality. So they looked at the intersections between food, art, history, and hospitality. So all these themes are very interesting. And together with a group of collaborators, mentors from the AGO, curators and artists, they collaborated together to create the Dawat Yan Banquet and website that we're going to see very shortly. So I'd like to welcome all the collaborators with us today. Thank you for joining us. Amin Asadan, Karina Askandarja, Nilofer Salimi, Abdallah Qureshi, and Ange Loft. Thank you so much for being with us today. And I want to say that Mariam and Eric started this residency with a question in mind: can we do an online banquet, and how does it look like? So I think together we will figure this out now in this conversation. So over to you, Eric.
Thank you so much, Dana. So hi, everyone. So my name is Eric, and I'm one of the co-host artists of the Dawat Yan Banquet. So first, let me introduce you what the Dawat Yan Banquet is. Dawat and Yan means an invitation, a feast, or a banquet in Urdu and Chinese, respectively. And so basically, the name itself can be translated as an invitation to a feast banquet or banquet, banquet, banquet. Of course, the name itself is not redundant because it's actually we're saying banquet in 3 different languages that can be sprout up to multiple meanings and the interpretation of the name of the project. So before we begin our conversation today, and thank you for joining us, we're going to ask artist Ange Loft to help us to fit this project within the context of Toronto. So Ange, I will just pass the mic to you.
Great. Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me talk, Eric. So starting to talk a little bit about Toronto and why it is, where it is, and what does it have to do with some of the acts we like to do around hospitality. If you have slides, go ahead and show that first image. I'm going to start talking a little bit about some of the places where the name Toronto comes from. I was a language learner myself, thinking about picking up. I realized doing this research, I can't do the research without learning language at the same time. So I learned one of the pronunciations for Toronto is Jida Garundo. That's from Kanien'kehá:ka people, my people. And it kind of means like over there is where there's a place where there's fishing weirs, a place where there's trees in water. So this thing is like a really unique place. You can see this place, it's marked on this map right now as Lac de Taranto, because when the French got around to this area, they were like, ooh, that's a place that like we need to put on a map. We need to like make sure that people understand that's where you need to go to get the fish. And it says on the map there, that's the road that the Iroquois would take, more or less, to be able to go up and down and get that fish. Because at the time period, that was when the Seneca were in Toronto. So you have like a lot of that kind of like layers. You'll hear the Wendat, and then the Seneca, and then the Mississaugas of the Credit very often. So just to give you a little bit more context for each one of those, super, super fast. So the Wendat here, we're there for a really long time. There's like a really old fishing weir, as I mentioned before, up there at Lake de Taranto, the place where the fishing weirs are. It's about 4,500 years old. And I'm going to go to the next slide in a minute and just in a second. But the cool thing you have to learn about that place is that like there's been a council fire there for, I don't know, almost 5,000 years at least. So just thinking about like a really important place of governance being just north of Toronto. And also the path that you see on this little road right now, that's one of the branches of the Carrying Place Trail. That's the reason why the British wanted to be here. There's the reason why the French wanted to be here. They wanted to have access to this really, really, really useful trail that could bring you up into the Great Lakes and get everything you need up there, like, you know, later on, like furs and stuff. So you go to the next slide, and I'm just going to show you like a really easy breakdown to see kind of like how things move into the city. So go ahead to the next one. This is the next slide will show a sequence of council fires. So once we move on to the next one, it'll show a sequence of places. Can you move on? Move on to the next one. But it'll show a sequence of places that are connected with this this agreement called the Eternal Council Fires Belt. So people talk about the dish with one spoon belt. That's super, super important. Yeah, let's move on to the next slide. Because you can kind of see like, it's hard to think about like, there we go, perfect. It's hard to think about like agreements, treaties that like connect right into the city, things that you can go like, oh, like I see this on this wampum belt. How can I connect it right into this place? So what you're looking at here is kind of, if you took a car to some of these sites of council, including Sault Ste. Marie, if possible, you can see like, if you've ever driven up to Sault Ste. Marie, it's pretty great. Behind that box, which I can see right now, it has a, I'm like, oh no, your Zoom's breaking because of my presentation. Anyhow, there's a council site on there, and it's about the Mississaugas of the Credit, the location on the Credit. That's super important. This place that's like, there we go. So it kind of like drives right into the city from around the Great Lakes and drives right into the city. So if you had a canoe, you could probably get there a little bit easier right through the lakes themselves. But those were like paths for some protection of some of those cool places, like the fishing weirs, the places that could like promise that there'll always be a certain amount of bounty that we can share. It's kind of like a really physical way to look at the dish with one spoon. And it's one of its interconnected relationships that bring us right into, actually right into Brampton, the kind of area these days. So the Credit River area, a place that was super significant for, they say they put an eagle to watch over the Credit. So that's the Dotem, one of the clan markers that are super important in that region. So I'm going to just wrap up what I'm saying. Let me pass to the next slide, but I'll just see if that's a really tangible way to kind of see where it ends up, because right now the place that the last Mississaugas village, where they had kind of a hybrid system at the time, they were becoming Methodist, but they were also like still doing their traditional governance structures. They still had councils, they still had all kind of cool stuff. Right now this place is the Mississauga Golf and Country Club. So just thinking like, you know, where some of our important sites are, important council sites are these days, are places that we can still visit, but like a little complicated. You could pay for you could pay for some permission to go there. But yeah, just like thinking about access to water these days and access to some of these important sites are something I've been playing with, because I do think that there's some relationship to how we are supposed to be with each other. And it's all connected to these networks, these long extended networks of hospitality. So I'll come back to it when I come to talking a little bit, but yeah, there's some rules about how to be hospitable that are like really old school rules connected to those like mappings, those places, those old rules for how to share and how to be in one place and how to like, you know, deal with disputes. So let's get into the good stuff and hope this supports the beginning of your conversation. Have a good one. Have a good talk, and I'll be here to listen until my time comes. Okay, take care.
Thank you so much, Ange. That is a great introduction to the project. So next, we're actually going to do an ice-breaking activity in which we prepare 3 questions to introduce ourselves and each artist. So the first one is Mariam. Would you like to do the show and tell?
Thank you so much, Ange, Dana, and thank you, Eric. Salam, everyone, and welcome to the Dawat Yan Banquet. My name is Mariam Magsi. I am your co-host today. Mariam is an ancient name that can be found in pre-Islamic Persia and is also shared by people of the book. In Christian communities, it is spelled in a variety of ways, such as Maria or Mary, while in Hebrew origins, it is spelled as Miriam, meaning drop of the sea, bitter, or beloved. In the Balkans, I am known as Mara. In Urdu, Arabic, and Farsi, I am known as Mariam. Due to shifts in accents, in Canada, I am known as Mariam. And at times I forget and find myself introducing Mariam as Mariam. My father, with whom I share a very close relationship, gifted this name to me upon my birth. My paternal heritage is Baloch, hence my surname is my clan name, Magsi. My maternal heritage is Punjabi, and I only woke up to that side of the family after my mother's demise in 2019. I arrived in Scarborough in 2004 to begin my journey as an international student in what is today known as Canada. I benefit from this land in a variety of ways by having access to healthcare, financial resources, a roof over my head, clean drinking water, and several other privileges and rights that are being denied to the original custodians of this land. As a member of the Baloch Magsi clan and as an artist with visibility today, I stand in solidarity with Indigenous communities on this land and continue to lend my voice, financial support, and allyship to Indigenous individuals, NGOs, businesses, organizations, artists, and urgent causes. For the Dawat Yan Banquet today, I have prepared a poem as a gift for all of our guest artists, and also, of course, for you, dear guests. The title of the poem is The Eternal Banquet of Heavenly Delights. Walk with me through the moon gate. Heavenly delights await you. Leave behind intolerance, injustice, and hate. We have prepared a feast for you. What shall we have first, dear guest? How many persimmons may I pick for you? Can we gather under the palm trees to rest? The essence of rose drifts toward you. Lean on me, dear guest. We are far from reckless seas. We are mirrors to each other at best. Dinner for one, please. Spring sighs and heaves huge sighs of relief. With arms linked, we'll get over these hills. But wait, are those fig trees I see? I will pluck a few, just for you. We'll have them with our pink tea. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariam, for your share. And next, we're going to move to Karina.
Hi, I'm Karina. Oh my God, I didn't prepare something quite as beautiful as Mariam. I don't know as much about the meaning of my name. My mother gave me that name. She tells me that it means purity. I know that it means pretty in Italian. It has also usage in Russia as well. But mostly people know Kareena Kapoor, who is the Bollywood star. And so every time I meet like a South Asian person or an Indian person, it's like, yeah, you'll remember me. But you know, my brother also has a similarly Russian name, and I don't know where that comes from either. But I don't also really know the history of my family very well. We generally are like mixed race Chinese immigrants who live in Indonesia. And yeah, I immigrated to Toronto via a student visa in 2015. I went to graduate school in OCAD, and much like a lot of people and a lot of immigrants, I came here for the professional and economic opportunities, which are not available to me in my hometown. And the gift that I brought to the banquet today is a passage from a book called The Island of Missing Trees by Ella Falk. And a part of parts of this passage, not this passage specifically that I'm going to share today, but I've used passages from this book in the video that I created for the project. And it's like it's 2 pages long, it's very short. I'm just gonna begin. The ancients believed there was a pole that ran through the universe, joining the underworld to earth and heaven. And at the center of this pole towered, mighty and magnificent, the great cosmic tree. Its branches held up the sun, the moon, the stars, and the constellations, and its roots reached all the way down into the abyss. But when it came to defining exactly what type of plant this might be, humans fell into bitter disagreement. Some said it could only be a balsam poplar. Others argued it must be a tamarind. This is how humanity divided into hostile nations and warring tribes. It was a very unwise thing to do, in my opinion, since all trees are essential and merit attention and commendation. You might even say that there is a tree for every mood and every moment. When you have something precious to give to the universe, a song or a poem, you should first share it with a golden oak before anyone else. If you are feeling discouraged and defenseless, look for a Mediterranean cypress or a flowering horse chestnut. Both are strikingly resilient, and they will tell you about the fires that they have survived. And if you want to emerge stronger and kinder from your trials, find an aspen to learn from. If you are hurting and have no one willing to listen to you, it might do you good to spend time beside a sugar maple. If, on the other hand, you are suffering from excessive self-esteem, do pay visit to a cherry tree and observe its blossoms, which, though undoubtedly pretty, are no less ephemeral than vainglory. By the time you leave, you might feel a bit more humble, more grounded. To reminisce about the past, seek a holly to sit under. To dream about the future, choose a magnolia instead. And if it is friends and friendships on your mind, the most suitable companion would be a spruce or a ginkgo. When you arrive at a crossroads and don't know which path to take, contemplating quietly by a sycamore might help. If you are an artist in search of inspiration, a blue jacaranda or a sweetly scented mimosa could stir your imagination. If it is renewal you are after, seek a wych elm. And if you have too many regrets, a weeping willow will offer solace. For wisdom, try a beech. For intelligence, a pine. For bravery, a rowan. For generosity, a hazel. For joy, a juniper. And when you need to learn to let go of what you cannot control, a birch with its white silver bark, peeling and shedding layers like old skins. Then again, love you're after, or love you have lost, come to the fig. Always the fig. So yeah, that book is partially told by a fig tree, which I haven't seen much in novels, and I loved that fresh perspective. And the book is about grief and immigration and like forbidden intercultural love between a Greek and a Turk in Cyprus. And this tree was brought over to London by this family, and it's planted. And this tree is an immigrant in the same way that the family who brought them to London is an immigrant. And yeah, it's a really wonderful book, and was thinking a lot about this book in relation to like everyone's projects too, and how all of our projects were kind of about these themes. And yeah, thank you for that's what I have to share.
Yeah, thank you so much, Karina. You have framed the project beautifully. So thank you for your gifts. So now let's move on to Nilu.
Yes, thank you, Eric. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. The meaning of my name, Nilufar is a name of a flower. The word has changed a lot or a bit through time from 2,500 years ago, but historically and generally, it means flower which its petals are the color of the Nile River. And in the remains of Achaemenid architectures, a nilufar or lotus is everywhere in the reliefs. And in the narratives of those reliefs, it's portrayed that those flowers were brought by Egyptians to Persia. So that's why it's the name, the color of the Nile River. And so probably it was a diplomatic exchange, or it was a gift from Egyptians to Persians, and they probably had a banquet when they arrived. And my name is Nilufar because I was born in a very hopeless time of history of Iran. And my parents chose it because it's a symbol of hope. And as we all know, lotus responds to the morning light, and begins the day and it opens up. So that's my name. We came to Toronto. I came to Toronto with my family about 20 years ago. And we landed in Toronto because we had the relatives, and their support was very essential. And thank you, Mariam, for mentioning all of the privileges that we have by coming here and becoming a resident here at Toronto. The gift that I share, I would usually, when I go to a banquet, I would usually like to bring something that I bake or something sweet, but virtually it wasn't possible. Or if I'm comfortable or prepared, I would sing a song maybe, but I was not prepared for that either. So I just a very short quote by Omar Khayyam that says, dead yesterdays and unborn tomorrows, why fret about it if today be sweet? So I really identify with that as an essential part of the banquet. We have to be present. So that related to my baking and the nature of the banquet. Thank you.
Thank you for the beautiful share. Abdullah, please take over.
Thank you. It's lovely hearing everyone's responses. And it's, of course, an honor to be part of this project. So thank you for inviting Eric and Mariam. My name, Abdullah, comes from Arabic and literally would mean man of God or man of Allah. Interpretations are servant of Allah, Allah's follower. It was also the name of Prophet Muhammad's father. My mother gave me this name because she saw it in a dream. And that is it. There's nothing more to it. And my first name is actually Muhammad. And it's interesting that I only use Abdullah professionally. So only members of my home call me Muhammad. And then there is a separation that is created between the private and the public. And so these two names actually allow me to navigate those identities. But that's how it's always been. And I came to Toronto. I immigrated to Canada in 2020. like many others have spoken, I came for reasons which promised more mobility, for instance, in terms of citizenship. I'm of Pakistani origin, and all my life it's been visas, and that's been a constant barrier in professional success. And also, of course, as a queer person, it also promised to be a space that could be more open and liberating. And at the same time, it of course remains a space that is constantly of learning and unlearning, because when Canada is advertised, it is advertised as this this liberal haven, and it very few, or I suppose only those in critical spaces, in artistic spaces or academic spaces, really get the opportunity to learn about Canada's violent relationship with Indigenous communities. So as an artist myself, it is something that I'm constantly learning and unlearning about, and I hope to continue extending solidarity in that way. In terms of my gift, I brought an object. It is a red nail polish, and it's called Forever Yummy. So if we were together in person, I would probably be offering this to guests, and I would encourage everyone to paint each other's nails. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That sounds fun. And Ange, please take over.
Okay, Clay. All right, so don't get scared. All right, I brought a deer. I brought a deer to dinner. So, okay. All right. Waya hawa yajats. Gahnawage nita waganu. Chita garunda ganagare. Okwari niwakitaroda. So I'm Bear Clan. I'm from Ganawage, which is just south of Montreal. So it's like really close, 15 minutes away from the city. So I was born in Montreal. I was born at a place called the Jewish General, which is like where most people in Montreal were born. So we got rushed over there, my mom, in the evening, and I was born at dawn. And only my auntie was present there. No one else was able to make it to my birth. And I got there, you know, just as the sun was rising. So my name is Angela Dawn Waiahawi Loft. Waiahawi means carrying fruit. It's my aunt. It was like a great aunt's name. Usually you're supposed to have like your own name, but I didn't get my own name. So I have a name that a lot of people in Ganawage have. I have a relationship, I guess, to, and oh yeah, Loft is my last name, and that might be Dutch origin. I have a great-great-grandfather that's like from Tandanaga, and some of the people that like, I guess, colonized Tandanaga area first were Dutch. So it was like, it means people that like Van Loft us in the loft house. So maybe we like dealt with hay or something, I don't know. But they named us that. So Toronto's the outer limit of Ganyakahanga territory, I'd like to think. Like it's one of those little fingers extensions where we lived here for a little while when the Seneca people were here. There's I think what I'm bringing, I guess, is a gift, is a deer, because there's as I mentioned, hospitality laws, rules that like, if like, you know, I bumped into somebody else from my clan out there in the world, I would have them over for dinner. And one of the nice things you could do if you want to make it nice and formal is to have a deer roast, to have some corn soup, which has some deer in it or the other kind of meat in it, and also cornbread. So like boiled, ground processed corn, just like white corn. We still make it, grow our own beans. My sister makes it. So it's a little really hard to make, but yeah, she processes her own corn, and so sometimes I get some corn from there, and I don't get any deer from anywhere because we haven't had any hunting territory for 100,000 years now. So this came from who knows where, Sault Ste. Marie. So looking at that old like map, that line of travel, that car, they took it. This deer took it, got all the way down to Toronto, and it's been bleached. So it's a friend of mine, Ricky Stapp's like bleached creation. So it ended up on my porch and it was a big surprise. But that's my gift. Yeah, so bring it here. If I had a real deer roast, you know, that would be nice to offer you all too. So in the future. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your share, and we already have some overlaps. No wonder we meet. That's star alignment. So now that it's my turn to share it. And so my name is Eric Chengyang, as introduced in the beginning. And why I came to Toronto? Because for many reasons. One of the reasons is because as a queer person, we tend to have this, maybe have some type of magnetic energy that we try to find other queer groups. So of course, when I went to school back in Waterloo, it has a small queer community. So I always think that Toronto has this like huge queer community, and I can meet more people, and then we can have some more. So basically, people that have something in common, and that does turn out to be true. So one of the things that I actually came to Toronto, it was really like this project that I completely started with on a blank page. And on this blank page, I met Mariam. So Mariam was actually one of the first friends I made in Toronto. And look at where we are now. We actually work on projects together. And that was because our path crossed about like 8-9 years ago. And then that moved on to my second point. So for the gift I'm bringing, so basically, I was telling a story to Mariam that in the Lunar New Year, also known as Spring Festival, or sometimes also known as the Chinese Lunar New Year, in the culture, there is a custom of people buying flowers or plants as a way to welcome luck and wealth or health to the household. So my grandma, we used to own this like a tiny tangerine tree, and she would hand this like a red, I don't know if you can see, just like a red envelope bag on the tangerine tree. But inside the bag, she would put this like golden chocolate coins inside the bag. So it's actually a way, so in case the kids want to pick the envelope. So that's like a alternative that some people do by putting the coin there as a metaphor for wealth and well-being. And I told Mariam this story, and then she got me this. I don't know whether you can see. It's actually a chocolate orange. And I find this is very touching, because this is actually an example of someone listened, and then also it's a gesture of hospitality that come out from exchange. And one thing that's very, very funny is that Mariam do not know at the time that my name, my Chinese name, Chengyang, actually means orange and sun. And like Ange, I was born in the morning. So my parents simply just named me after the color of the sun in the morning. And the funny thing is, I'm also, in terms of my astrology, I'm all fire sign, or mostly fire sign. So there's a lot of fire in me. So it's good thing that we're doing this from the distance, because if we get too close, I might be a lot. So that's my share. Now let's move on to the second part. Okay, so for the second part, the question is, so each artist actually has a specific theme assigned to them, and they were asked to freely interpret that theme based on their own practice and their background. So we are going to show you the project website right now, while we are going to ask each artist to talk about their contributions. Oh, oops. Okay. Oh, just one sec, I think it's lagging. Okay, we're here. Should I do full screen? Okay. So first, Mariam, you're going for, oh, sorry. Actually, so Amin couldn't be here today. But his higher self is still with us. So I'm going to just channel his higher self and then tell you about his project. So the project is starting with 2 chapters, which is Mariam's chapter called Essence of Rose, and Amin's chapter called Homes in My Palms. So in Amin's work, he actually talked about how a tiny piece of dates can provoke the sense of home, especially for those people who went on exile or seeking refuge elsewhere. It's actually a very beautifully written short essay piece, and it's already available on our website. So I just recommend you to read about it. It's actually one of the first pieces that really shape the foundation of project, including how the website is structured. And then Mariam, would you like to talk about your parts?
Thank you so much, Eric. My designated theme for the Dawat Yan Banquet was food and hospitality. And from the early stages, I really wanted to embody the spirit of hospitality and gift giving by generating continuous engagement with members of the public. So in the opening project, Arke Gulab, or Essence of Rose, guests are invited to engage in a virtual hand washing ceremony, and carefully using ASMR techniques through sound and performance, and immersive experiences created for the guest. Essence of Rose is a space of healing and respite. And of the various responses we've received, many have said that Essence of Rose helps them fall asleep a little easier. In Dawat-e Biryani, I collaborate with my husband, Gordon Sumansky. This project became a unique opportunity to show how a person from outside a community can develop deep love for foods, customs, and faith-based practices. Gordon converted to Islam in 2019 and has spent a considerable amount of time in Pakistan consulting local experts, family elders on topics like authenticity, historical origins, and regional variations on the making and consumption of biryani, which is a truly inclusive, historic, and unique dish that is enjoyed in many parts of the Asian continent in a variety of ways. Apart from easy to adjust recipes and instructions, which are our gift to banquet guests, we also share stories derived from family archives. As a foodie kid who has gone through life being fed way more than I have cooked, this also became a way to acknowledge the labor of love that goes into food preparation. Folks following our project have attempted to make biryani at home and have also shared photos and feedback with us with immense enthusiasm. In Dawat-e Kashmiri Chai, my maternal aunt Shahina Khan and I get together in Scarborough, and we create a pink-themed banquet feast. The work opens with Shahina welcoming us inside her home. She is very happy to wear fancy pink shalwar kameez and bright lipstick. After all, it's been a while since she had the opportunity to dress up. And as with Dawat-e Biryani, here too, we reach into family archives, intergenerational stories, and historical narratives together. The Kashmiri chai is served in bowls, which is how it was originally consumed before teacups made an appearance on the scene. Here too, a historic recipe for Kashmiri chai that has existed in my maternal family for generations has been shared with the public, and there are ample ways to alter the recipes so as to suit your dietary preferences. Last but not least, my fourth submission to the Dawat Yan Banquet is titled The Persistence of Memory, and it is inspired by Salvador Dali's surrealist ideas around space, time, and memory. Vintage photographs of post-colonial, post-partition banquets celebrated in my maternal family's history are scanned and digitally transferred onto doilies. Doilies are ornamental mats, usually in varying shades of white, made of fabric or paper with a lace pattern. They are typically placed under cakes or pastries. Fun fact, the word doily actually comes from the last name of a wealthy man from London, UK, who traded in dry foods in the 17th century. The patterns and textures of the doilies bleed into the vintage photographs. The photographs were printed in Lahore, Pakistan back in 1976. The generation featured in this photograph, which also includes my mother on the far right, inherited a brand new country, brand new identity, unprocessed and unimaginably violent trauma, fueled by nationalism, along with immense pressures to preserve culture, prevent erasure, and always be hospitable so as to avoid being perceived as a failed Pakistani citizen. Desirable, hospitable citizens were created by nationalistic design, and I too have inherited that. This photograph was made 29 years after Pakistan was formed in a violent partition with India, largely due to British interference. And only 6 years after this wedding banquet was recorded, Bangladesh declared its independence from Pakistan in 1971. There's a tear in the photograph when you'll go onto the website and zoom in a bit closer. And this tear also transfers onto the doily, echoing gaps in history. The doily is taken out of its original function and also serves as a spherical light box, illuminating the otherwise fading black and white photograph. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mariam. Karina, would you like to start?
Yeah, okay, so I was asked to create a work as part of this banquet project, responding to a specific theme. And the theme that Mariam and Eric gave me was of the bouquet. And at first I was, I had really no idea what I wanted to do, but actually it was a great fit for like my current love of like plants and my interest in culture and ecologies. So I ended up creating this video essay, which is sort of half a documentary about fig trees and half like personal journal entries and poems. And big shout out to Daniel Howe, who did part of the voiceover, and also our very own Mariam Magsi, who played the fig tree in part of this video as well. And so yeah, if you watch the video, it kind of feels like a fever dream of like flipping through like TV channels and learning about the different cultural significances of these ficus trees or fig trees. And of course, their significance to ecologies, specifically as a source of food for birds, which is why I called it bird feed. And one section I created this sort of like surreal 3D pink room, which is supposed to be the color of the inside of a strangling fig tree. And inside is this sort of like installation that's a shrine to the fig trees and the birds that they feed. Yeah, that is, I think all I have to say about this work specifically. Like, I'm so excited to be a part of this this banquet, and yeah, excited to hear more about each works from the other artists.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Karina. That was breathtaking work. Nilu, would you like to start?
Absolutely. Thank you, Eric. Well, very honored to be asked to be part of this project, which is expanding as we speak with all of you guys at the Zoom gathering today. So initially, when I was asked to bring something to the virtual banquet, I thought of fruits. Automatically, instantly, I thought of persimmon and mulberries, and I explained why these specific fruits. And then the projects were being added to the website, and then I identified so much with Amin's essay, and then Karina's video, and then more of Mariam's connection with the past, with the family, with the current. So it was just, it was amazing how all of the things that were added before adding my drawing to the project were connected. And before pandemic started, when pandemic started, I started drawing one branch a day from this window that here I see one crabapple tree. And to calm myself down, to ground myself down, I started to draw one branch a day. And as the days went by, I realized I'm seeking this real connection to the earth, to the soil that down there. And this connection was happening by looking and observing every one of the leaves that I drew. And then the next spring, still in pandemic, the blossoms came and different changes to the tree. And when the banquet project began, I kind of meditated to think, what am I going to do about it? And again, automatically, this flood of memory of my childhood being on the tree and having fruits directly from the trees in my grandmother's yard with my cousins on top of the tree. So that image or that memory was just a perfect banquet. We had shelter. The tree was our shelter. Being up on the tree was excitement. So that was entertainment of the banquet. And the tree was providing us with food and hydration and sugar and all of the sweetness that we were exchanging as children. And and I think of the psychology of this part of why I chose tree. It was just because I was drawing a tree every day, and that memory came to me, which was very, very strong memory. And I still speak to my cousins and my sister about those trees, the mulberry and the persimmon tree. Which is, they are very rare fruits. And I just wanted to add that the line in Amin's essay about how date is not an abstract idea, it's not an abstract fruit that you can go and buy it in a supermarket. You have a real connection with the tree, with the sheltering, the palm being a shelter. And so just thank you for including me in this beautiful project. Thank you, Mariam, and thank you, Eric.
Thank you for your work, Nilu. And Abdullah, your turn.
Thank you. So when I was invited to be part of this project, I was given the task of thinking about queerness and banquet. And I think generally speaking, my relationship with banquets, as I've known them growing up, has been one of angst and anxiety, mainly because they tend to be such heteronormative events within Pakistani culture, around weddings, around the circumcision of a boy, etc. And oftentimes, at least for me, and from what I've heard a lot of other queer folks as well, our queerness or our difference becomes pronounced in that kind of context. And it often becomes one which, and it is often interrogated, that difference. And so really, over time, it's something that I have, particularly avoided any banquet that I was invited to. This, however, was a unique banquet, and that's why I was very thrilled to be part of it. And in that sense, I started thinking about what it meant to be alone and what it meant to be alone and single, and in terms of how that kind of fit into the heteronormative idea of being part of these banquets. And so there are multiple strategies that we take, but one is this idea of akela hu tanha nahi, which specifically draws a distinction between being alone and lonely. And this comes from a story from a classical dancer and educator who was based in Lahore. And so from that, I take that as a point of departure to develop various photographic works in this series that are called Dinner for One, Please. It looks at the spiritual, but it also thinks about celebration of singlehood, a rejection of heteronormative ideas of companionship, and also embraces elements of my sexual identity that otherwise perhaps are not spoken about in mainstream spaces. For instance, the idea of hosting within gay culture and the elements that come within that when we are engaging in anonymous encounters. So the various works kind of touch upon these very different ideas that are interconnected. And Mariam and Eric also wanted to feature my film Journey to the Charbagh as part of this project, and that is from my ongoing doctoral project at Aalto University in Finland. It very much responds to or interrogates the idea of queer Muslim identity within a migratory context. In this instance, I work with the figure of the Burak, which is described as a handsome-faced creature that took the Prophet Muhammad to heaven, and heaven is described as 4 gardens. So in this particular film, the Burak appears in 3 iterations, essentially as a metaphor to think about migration and deconstructing the idea of heaven as an ultimate destination, one which is also denied to queer bodies within that kind of thinking. And so in that sense, these are my contributions to the banquet, perhaps a bit of a disruption, but I hope, they open up different ways of thinking around it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abdullah. So Abdullah is actually a perfect transition into my work. So my theme, oh, by the way, so Abdullah's theme is on queerness and banquet. And then Mariam's theme is on the hospitality of food and banquet. So my theme is actually it's like a crossover between both of them, which is performance, or the performance nature of banquet. So I was thinking about how do I interpret performance through a digital platform that can transcend digital boundaries. So one of the way I was as I was developing the website, I realized that there's actually HTML, CSS, the coding, it sounds like a headache, especially for visual artists like me. But as I was developing the website, I realized that they are actually a very useful tool to create a sense of interactive storytelling. And that is part of my ongoing practice, is to figure out how to use different types of visual mediums and digital hybrid media for visual storytelling. So one of the work I want to show you, I'm not going to click on it because this work is actually quite personal. But please take the chance to observe the work on your own. So I was thinking about what connects all the culture together, what connects everyone together. Besides plants, 2 of the most predominant things that can be experienced by most cultures are the moon, particularly the phases of the moon or the movement of the moon, and water, because civilizations are built around water, but also violence are also caused by fighting of resources, including water. And then also blockade was built to prevent people from getting access to water. And also the very real issue we are experiencing here in Ontario that Mariam mentioned in her part during part 1 as well. And I was thinking about, so initially I was thinking about the moon as like a witnesser or like a adventurer who witnessed the banquet or everyone's story from the banquet. And then as I was developing the project and figure out the medium to do it, I decided to take the idea of the moon apart and then basically dissect the idea of the moon and then to redistribute them across the banquet. So the second work I want to show you is actually this piece. So one of the things that I was finding very interesting is that 3 of our artists are very, very obsessed with trees, and that is completely spontaneous. there's no prior communication between them, and just everyone just suddenly has just like a very, very spontaneous, very natural overlaps. And I was very, very inspired by that. So I was thinking that maybe there's a way to capture this type of resonance, this type of like a type of emotions that us humans, no matter who we are, that we can experience. So I thought about a way to approach a project. And in this particular work, the maple, of course, well, is on the Canadian flag, and lychee is actually fruit from my hometown. And I realized that they actually belong to the same family, which is very, very interesting. And then they belong to this family. I actually learned how to pronounce that word, but I still don't remember. I think it's called, actually, I'm not going to try it since we recorded. But basically, I realized that they're related, and I find that that's very, very interesting. It's kind of like it kind of reminds me of my own my migratory journeys as well. And then but this work is actually interactive. So I just recommend you or advise you just to try it out on your own. And then the second piece that I have is actually this piece as well, which is also a very, very personal work. And I was trying to figure out how to overlap the personal with something that with a larger resonance. So that's what this work is about. And then I got this idea when I saw the show at the Museum of Modern Art, Summer, by Felix Gonzalez Torres, and which is a show that made me cry twice in the meeting. So I will definitely not talk about it. Yeah, so that is actually my my project. Is basically using code to figure out how to create interactive storytelling, and that's how I interpret the idea of performance in relationship to banquet. Yeah, thank you. And let's go back to the slideshow now. I think we have time for a half Q&A. We have 3 minutes. We're originally scheduled 10 minutes, but now we have only 3 minutes left. So let's just say that a quarter Q&A.
Thank you, Eric and Mariam and everyone. It was wonderful to see how all the projects have this connection, and it was incredible to see how the website looks like. Today I see the final version, so thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I loved the part where you all shared your gifts. That was such a unique piece. And this is what I love about your project, is that it's very personal. Although you talk about all these themes, but it's all very personal to you, which is fascinating. We don't have Q&A, but maybe there is one question now. Well, I mean, there is no Q&A, but I would love to ask a question. I know that you both started working on this project in the beginning of the pandemic, and you were interested in the food scene in Toronto. So I just would love to know a little bit about the beginnings. How did it all start? How did you come up with the concept and chose your collaborators?
Mariam, would you like to start?
Sure. So as Eric mentioned, you know, we've known each other for a while. And in 2019, after my mother's death, as I've mentioned in a couple of the meetings we've had together as well, I returned to Toronto just feeling really lost. And, you know, as if, you know, my center just wasn't there. Dawat Yan project became a very unique way to process my grief, to revive culture, food, history, intergenerational knowledge, and really find a place where I could put it and unpack it, but also respond to it, critique it, and understand it a bit better. And then, you know, within our own exploration and research in Toronto as well, we came through some very interesting things like gastronomical nationalism, culture wars, food and taste hierarchies. We began to ask certain questions after doing our research as well, such as, why do people pay so much food for Italian and French food to consider it authentic? Why does Pakistani, Indian, Chinese food come under a cheaper category for it to be authentic? So, you know, these kind of critical questions began to form as we were researching food, but also culture, history, and, you know, all of the other stuff that you see on the banquet. And then I will pass over the mic to Eric so they can inform you about how we put everyone together in this. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So if there's a emerging artist watching, there's actually one very personal thing I want to share with you. This project actually came out from the failed proposal that Mariam and I pitched the project to a similar residency, and then it didn't get through. And then Mariam and I was like, why don't we, that's such a great idea to using food to make connections between different communities. So that's why we continued the project. And then the project went on its own for a year. And then I think like this is what we are constantly talking about is just like a idea of like a star alignment or crossing path, the right time, right place, right moment. That now that we cross path AGO, and then also our 6 artists, including so as shown here, besides me and Mariam. And then what happened? So how each artist is picked is that it's also based on our past experience with them. So for example, Amin, who isn't here today, I actually met him through work, and we only like maybe exchange a few times, but I know that his major and his expertise in architecture. So we came up with this theme architecture for him, and he has been interpreted very, very beautifully. And then Nilu too. So for Nilu, it's interesting is I remember I went to this Christmas party, and then like I'm not a party person. I'm like basically like a wallflower. So I will fit perfectly in the floral theme. And I look very floral today. And then I remember I was washing dishes because I was a bit bored. And then if you want someone to wash the dishes, invite me to your party. I like to wash dishes and I love cleaning up. So and then Nilu was like talking about, I think she was showing me, forgive me, I pronounce it incorrectly. I think it's called Minaraki. It's basically the Persian, it's called enamel, right? It's like
that's Minakari.
Yeah. Yes. And then you also mentioned something about a pomegranate. And then I was like, so that was like many years ago. And then one day, Mariam was talking about this project, and then this conversation just came up. And then so that's why we thought about Nilu. And then Karina as well, we worked with her together. And then Ange, also Abdullah, because we also know Abdullah personally. And Ange is a very interesting thing. How we met is that we actually met at Ange's talk at the power plant. And then because that day the gallery is not as busy, so we're allowed to sit through the talk, and it was an amazing talk. So and then but very sadly that that was like maybe just like a 3 weeks or 4 weeks before this presentation today. So I really wish I had met Ange earlier, but we're very grateful that Ange can join us today. And that's it. That's how we met. And anyone have something to add?
Well, I'd like to add one more thing. So with Abdullah's works, so I've been following Abdullah's practice for a while now, and I'm actually after a couple of his paintings. And then the film Journey to Jarba came out. I've seen it a couple of times. I absolutely love it. It's visually scrumptious. And as Paola Poletto from the AGO also said the other day, just couldn't look away. And it really is one of those films. And the reason we invited Abdullah is because what we have to understand, as Abdullah clarified when he was speaking, is that the site of the family or the banquet or the culture of origin itself can be a source of exclusion and trauma. And so really, I was looking for a way that this banquet, our banquet, can be disrupted. And that was my reason for inviting Abdullah to the project.
Thank you so much, Eric and Mariam and Amin, Nilofer, and Abdullah and Karina. It was great seeing all of you today, and thank you for all the work that you've done. And I know that the project is going to continue, so I encourage everyone to follow the project on the website, through the blog, and on Instagram, the Dawat Yan project. If you can move to the next slide, yeah, these are all the hashtags and all the right addresses. So I'm looking forward to see how you guys are going to continue elaborating on this journey. So thank you all our viewers for tuning in today, and perhaps we can move to the next slide so I can remind everyone about our last workshop as part of the AGO RBC Emerging Artists Workshop series. So the workshop we have on Friday is on digital representation. So we're going to explore what does it mean to have a digital representation and how does it look like. So I hope to see everyone on Friday. And finally, just a big thank you to our signature partner RBC for supporting this program and all the emerging artist programs we offer together. So have a good evening, everyone. And thank you so much, everyone, for being here today.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.